Hey, USA. It's just me, and as you know, I'm nobody, just an American. And this is Just an American Moment. This is the podcast where we ask the questions the mainstream media won't ask, and where we provide the answers that the political class either can't or won't, or maybe even refuse to answer. So, welcome to today's podcast. It's been a couple of weeks since I've been on because just like you, I'm nobody, just in America. And between my list of honeydews and my responsibilities to grandkids and all that, and dogs, we we were just too busy. But it's glad to be back in the fold. And actually, the last 2 weeks was really great because I had an opportunity to speak to a bunch of Americans from all walks of life, from different parts of the country. And the greatest part about that is when you talk to them and you get to uh, how they feel about America, there's one thing they all have in common, no matter what their race, religion, ethnic background, anything else. They all feel that they're Americans. The issue that they have, and it was the same issue and the same question from all of them, is what the hell is going on in America? What is going on in this country? People aren't stupid. They see what's happening and they want to know what's going on. And probably more so, they want to know what we can do about it. You know, the first thing that it seems to come up in the conversations is the whole border issue. There's a lot going on, but the border jumps out because people know there's chaos. It's a crisis. And no one's doing anything about it. The Vice President of the United States makes a trip to Guatemala and Mexico and goes for the purpose of getting to the root cause of the Central American problems that are causing the border crisis. Well, let me tell you something, Madam Vice President. The crisis is at the border. That's where the problem is. You're going to see if you can get to the root cause of the problems in Central America. Well, I'll tell you what, I've been around for about 3/4 of a century right now. And let me tell you, the problems in Central America haven't changed. They have systemic poverty, they have corruption, they have leftist regimes that would rather fill their own pockets than help the pockets of their own people. There is crime that is rampant. But guess what? It's been there forever. So you're not going to get to the root cause of that problem. You want to get to the root cause of a problem, get to the root cause of the problems in Chicago. Get to the root cause of the problems in Portland. Get to the root cause of the problems in New York, Seattle, Los Angeles. All over the country, we've got cities where the crime rates are going up and you're not there. So before you even think about making the trip down to the border, how about make a trip to Chicago, then make the trip down to the border? Because that crisis is real, and so is the crisis in our inner cities. So think about that for a while. Well, obviously, the conversation with the people I was speaking with, you go from the border, you go to the whole issue of immigration. And it's really phenomenal because you talk to people, and what they all agree is that immigration is not only a good thing for our country, it is a great thing for our country. All the people I spoke with over the last couple of weeks thought that the successes in this country couldn't have happened without immigrants. And they're supportive of immigrants, but they're supportive of legal immigration. Legal, people who came here legally. And that's the difference. The people on the left keep conflating illegal with legal. And it was, kind of funny. The people on the left are always talking about how racist people on the right are. Well, what a joke. The group of people I was talking to was a mixed bag, and it was kind of interesting. People from Italy, whose backgrounds are from Italy, their grandparents came or their parents came from Italy, people from Greece, they can remember or have heard the stories from their grandparents about when people from places like Greece and Italy, or even Spain for that matter, were called those dark Mediterraneans. And I happen to know about that because I'm the ancestor of one of those. Or I should say, I'm sorry, descendant of one of those. But the point is, they were called dark Mediterraneans. Then there are people with Irish ancestry. And they were talking about how, oh, yeah, I remember my grandfather talking about being accused of being a potato picker. Potato picker, got it? Yeah, like the New York accent. Well, the fact of the matter is that all of these people were discriminated. I talked to a Chinese buddy, and he can remember ancestors who were called coolies. But there was one unique about all these people and about their descendants. They became Americans. They made America. They adopted and developed American culture. They weren't victims. But we now have a group of people who want to create a victim class. And those people are white liberals, which is really a joke. They're the most racist people in the country. It's just unbelievable. So, anyhow, one of the other interesting aspects of the people I've been speaking with is their position as it relates to politics. Now, there are some people who are politically engaged like I am. They like to talk about politics. They like to be engaged in politics. They watch the news media relentlessly. But there are others who have just had it. They're done. They're sick and tired of politics. They're sick and tired of politicians. And they're sick and tired of a media that offers nothing anymore but commentary, not news. And so they'd rather watch the Hallmark Channel or ESPN than pay attention to what's going on in politics. And they know it's wrong. They know they should still be engaged, but they have just had it up to here. And this is the whole reason, by the way, I wrote my book. Because people are asking the questions and they're not getting any feedback. They're not getting any answer. So I took it upon myself to write a book about it and do a podcast on it. And that's what I'm trying to do here. And if all this isn't as messed up, think about the confusing message coming out of the White House and the presidency and Washington in general. I mean, it has gotten out of hand. The president went over to Europe. He's in England. He's speaking to our military. And he says that his Joint Chiefs told him that the greatest threat to the United States of America is global warming. Global warming. Now, let me tell you something. If the Joint Chiefs of Staff said that global warming is the greatest threat to the United States, then we need a new Joint Chiefs of Staff. And if we have a president who believes that, then we need a new president. Except our president doesn't really mean it. He just spouts the words that he's told to spout. Because you all may recall, it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago in Oklahoma, the same president told everybody that the greatest threat to this country is white supremacy. White supremacy. Whatever that is. And then you have the Democrat Party, who 8 months ago, 9 months ago, a year ago, came out and said, the singular greatest threat to the United States of America is Russian interference with our elections. And we have a president who was involved with the Russians. Of course, he wasn't. But that's what they said. And they try to scare the crap out of the electorate. This is just such BS, folks. And you know what? The people I spoke with over the last couple of weeks, this was the consensus amongst them. I mean, they just had it. You know, it's funny. They all say climate change or global warming or whatever you want to call it is not the concern of these people. Their concern is the future of their children or their grandchildren who are growing up in a country that is trending to the extreme left. And they're worried about their children, particularly those who are Caucasian, of being accused of being white supremacists or critical race theory, or which is all a bunch of nonsense. And we all know it, but the media is afraid to say it. You know, the white supremacist narrative that comes from the president and the congressional Democrats is the bigger concern of these people. They don't want to be called names. They all view their neighbors, no matter what their ethnic background, as their neighbors. And yet, we have got a group of people out there telling us that white supremacy is a real threat to America. And yet, all the people agree. They wake up every morning, they want to hear about white supremacy crimes. There are no white supremacy crimes. There are black on black crimes. There are, which are totally ignored by liberals. There are Antifa. There is in Portland. There is BLM. There are gangs. There are drug cartels. There are all these anarchist organizations. But white supremacy? White supremacy is the biggest threat to America? Are you kidding me? And that's just how the people I spoke with feel. And by the way, they're not all Caucasian. So just to put that in perspective. And anyhow, just for a second, on this white supremacy thing, who exactly are these people? What are their names? What groups do they belong to? Where are they located? How many of them are there? They keep talking about them, but they don't seem to share a lot of information. Wouldn't you like to know, if this is the biggest threat to America, who are these people? I'd like to know. But you know what, folks? We never will. It serves a media narrative and the political left's narrative. They're not going to tell us. So on a different note this week, this one was great. Nancy Pelosi, she talked about the nerve of CEOs and the salary gap between them and the people who work for them. This is Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi, who has an asset worth of between $57 and $271 million, is talking about the disparity. Gee, Nancy, what's the disparity between your net worth and that of one of your staffers? Wouldn't you like to know? And isn't it kind of funny that she only brings up CEOs? Well, let me tell you something, folks. The majority of CEOs in the country aren't making 7 and 8 figure salaries. You know, at best they're making a good 6-figure salary. And we're also talking about people who have the responsibility from employees from 30 employees up to 100,000 employees. So the variation is huge. Even check the salaries of the CEOs on publicly listed companies, and you'll find they're not all walking around with $1 million paychecks. That I can guarantee you. But Nancy, do you ever hear Nancy challenge professional athletes? Now, what's the difference, the disparity between a professional athlete and the people serving beer and hot dogs in the bleachers? Quite a difference. And let me tell you something. Most CEOs don't come close to making the kind of compensation that professional athletes make. So that's bogus. And what about entertainers? We have entertainers who are making tens to hundreds of millions of dollars. Do you think the people who play in their band, who back them up with the lighting, do all the mechanics, the roadies, you think those people are making anything close to what the entertainer's making? Not a chance. Not a chance. But Nancy didn't say anything about them. She didn't say anything about the actors. The actors who, make maybe $10 million a film. You think the boom operator makes that? I don't think so. But Nancy, the hypocrite, Just keeps doing it. She even fails to mention people in the media. Look at somebody like a Stephanopoulos who supposedly makes more than $11 million a year. For doing what? For being a Democrat hack on TV? Come on, let's be serious. You know, but the Democrats won't call those people out. They only they want to create division. They want to create class distinction. But they will only do it with certain groups. CEOs, bad. Entertainers, athletes, whatever, good. And why is that? Because it's where their donations come from, their political contributions. That's why it happens. And you got to wonder. You got to wonder how representatives in Congress at $170,000 a year amass such great wealth. Don't you ask yourself? You know, you read a couple of Peter Schweitzer's books, you'll get a pretty good idea of where all this wealth is coming from. But you don't even have to go that far. You can check it out in the media. You can read. You'll find out exactly the kind of money these people are making. So what are they? They're hypocrites. Hypocrites, hypocrites. Last thing I want to touch on is the so-called summit that the president was on. All I could say is, as an American, what an embarrassment. What an embarrassment. And despite the inept media who failed to highlight the lack of accomplishments of this president and his failure to stand toe-to-toe with Vladimir Putin, of course he can't because Putin would have made mincemeat out of him. But this president had the nerve to stand in front of an international audience after being, by the way, chastised by Putin, supposedly in their meeting, and talk about January 6th. And he perpetuated the lie that a police officer was murdered at the occupation of the Capitol, the occupation that the Capitol Police let people come into. But he talks about the murders committed at the Capitol, when the fact is, the one police officer died of natural causes the next day, and I think it was either a stroke or a heart attack. But he failed to mention the fact that a military veteran, Ashley Babbitt, was shot at point-blank range by a Capitol police officer, and to this day, we don't know the truth. We do not have that information. Now, just think about if somebody from Antifa was shot at one of the Portland riots. We would know the name of the police officer. His address would be put out in public. They would want him resigning from the police force. There would be chaos. But here, not a word. So the final concern attached to all this is something that was part of the original question by all the people I talked to this week. And that question is, who's in charge in Washington? We know we have a president who says he has to be careful what he says. He is handled and managed and manipulated. And that means there's someone else in charge. Don't you think the American people are entitled to know who's running the show? I know I'm kind of concerned about it. Anyhow, we'll try to answer those questions over the next few weeks. In the meantime, please get the book. You won't be disappointed. Help me out. I just self-publish, and I think this is a book worth reading. So with that, have a great week. I'll talk to you next week.